So, hello, Hare Krishna, Namo Namaha, and welcome everyone to our third part of this lecture series, which we have titled as Karmanyavadikaraste. It's a gift of knowledge out of love and affection by some of your super seniors, 25 years of age. Uh, uh, it's a gift of knowledge, what we have got from some other people outside the university during our course of life after we passed out from university. We thought that this will be a meaningful knowledge information for all of you, the youngsters, the leaders of future. And that's why we are here to share some of these pearls of wisdom based on Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So today's topic, as has been chosen by the community of students, why bad things happen to good people. So we have already done a class on Karmanyavadikaraste, Gita 2.47. And in that class, we briefly tried to explain to you uh, the theory of karma, the theory of action and reaction, and so on. So why bad things happen to good people? A short answer is that it is because of our karma, our past actions that we have done. So the fruits we bear in the present lifetime or future lifetime. But how all this unfolds, how is the details of this topic, what are the intricacies of this topic, we need to actually, we will discuss this in particular this class. So to strike an auspicious note, I will make a small Mangalacharan prayer. This is basically a offering of our respects to our teachers from whom we have gained these wisdom. Also a general prayer for the good and benefit of all the living entities on this planet. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. The translation is, I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my teacher opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respects unto him. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. May all become happy, may all be free from illness, may all see what is auspicious, may no one have suffering. So I think I have already given this introduction in the previous class and I do not see any new people, so I will skip this slide. Okay, maybe we will do a 5-10 minutes of a recap, and I would request the student community who have joined us and who have been participating in the previous classes to help revise and recap the previous class. It is something, not something which is, I would say, should see as an intimidating request, but something, whatever small or little you remember from the previous class, maybe you can share with me, and then I can list you the bullet points of what I have prepared for the slide. So maybe I will just request the student community to unmute their mic or maybe raise their hand if they want to speak in revising the previous class. I see Jahanvi, I see Rahul, Rohan, Swati, Shrikant, and Astuti. Yes. So have you joined the previous classes? Looks like Rohan has joined us. Probably Jahanvi also
Yes,
had
sir.
joined us, right? So anything that you can help us recall and revise from the previous class, Rahul, Rohan, that will actually, we want to make it a little interactive, so it is not a one-way street, and you also kind of say participate here. Do you remember anything, any points?
जी हाँ महोदय।
Yes.
So
जो
class
हम
1 was on Gita 2.47 and class 2 was on Science of Soul. Yeah.
जो हमारे पिछले क्लास में साइंस ऑफ सोल में हमें ये पता चला था कि जो हमारी आत्मा है वो अनश्वर है और वो जो शुरुआत से हमेशा वो चाहे हमारे शरीर है वो बदलता है परंतु आत्मा आगे बढ़ जाती है। और जो गीता में हमने देखा था कि अर्जुन के सामने उसकी दो ड्यूटीज सामने आ गई थी, तो कृष्ण भगवान ने उन्हें ये समझाया था कि जो हमारी आत्मा, ये जो रिश्ते हैं, ये बंधन है, ये सारी सारी हमारे शारीरिक बंधन है जो कि केवल हमारे शरीर से जुड़े हैं, परंतु हमारी जब हमारा शरीर के देहांत हो जाता है तो हमारी आत्मा अगले शरीर में चली जाती है और केवल वो बंधन का कोई महत्व नहीं रहता।
Okay, very good, very good, good point. And what was the second identity? One was related to body, the other was
Souls.
soul itself. Yes, okay,
Yes, sir.
good,
Yes,
very
sir.
nice, very
Soul
nice.
is the permanent identity, sir, and our body is our temporary identity.
Soul is the permanent identity. So that is actually what is the benefit of this. Soul is the permanent identity. What is the uh, how how are we supposed to take this information? Why is this information important?
शायद से क्योंकि हमारे जो भी हमारे कर्म होते हैं, जो हमारे अच्छे कर्म, जो बुरे कर्म, वो हमारे आत्मा के संग ही जाते हैं और हमें उनका सारा भुगतान करके ही हमें मोक्ष प्राप्ति हो सकती है।
Very nice. Okay, so we need to be worried about, because we have to pay for what we do. If not in this life, then maybe in next life, right? So the permanent identity is very important, because we cannot run away from all these things, because as a permanent identity, we are eternal beings and we have to be responsible for all these things. So very nice. Anything else? Anything from the first class, which was on
Sir,
Karmanye
in the
Vadikaraste?
first class, we had learned that our results, we are not the only cause of our results. Our results depend both on our karma or work and daiva or destiny.
Yeah.
And that destiny is not entirely out of our hands. It actually depends on our deeds in our previous lives and all.
Yeah, it is not something, everything is by chance. We play a big part in deciding our destiny. Yeah, very good. Anything else? Anything apart from Rahul and Rohan? Anyone else? Jahanvi ji?
We should not worry about the results.
Uh-huh.
Should work on our karma, and the results are not in our hands. Like we are
Yeah,
not.
yeah. So focus mainly on our duty, mainly, and results actually are not in our hands entirely. So that will be revealed to us in due course of time. So should we not set goals, Janvi ji, for this, because of this?
No, we should set goals.
Okay. So Gita is not against setting goals, right? Okay. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So I think that is very nice. Really happy that you, many of you have remembered a lot of points. I will just quickly do the recap. Gita class 1, 2.47. Be dutiful, be responsible. Karmanyev adhikaraste. So that is telling us be dutiful, be responsible. There are other factors deciding the outcome of our action. Karmanyev adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So the second line is there are other factors. Not everything is under your control. There are other factors who decide the outcome of your actions. Destiny, we defined destiny factors beyond our control. We then gave a philosophical definition of destiny. It is because of our past actions. Then a lot depends on our karma, like what the point just now mentioned. And karma does not go waste. Whatever karma we do, we have to bear the fruits of that karma. It doesn't go waste. So this particular learning actually make us become responsible, because we will be averse to doing bad karma. So that gives us a sense of responsibility to our actions. And since the karma does not go waste, whenever we do something nice, something meaningful, we are hopeful that certainly it will bear some result, if not in this lifetime and in next lifetime. So this is actually a wonderful concept, which instill in us the feeling of responsibility and hopefulness. Then the second class was Science of Soul, our identity based on body, which is temporary, which the class also identified. Our identity based on soul is permanent, that also class identified. And then we decided how to build a case for soul, because this is something which is a subtle concept, a spiritual concept. And being people born and brought up in a scientific environment where seeing is believing is the main philosophy, we sometimes tend to overlook these concepts. So we try to explain the concept of soul based on two intuitive understanding. One was uh, this is my finger, but I am separate from my finger. That was one intuitive understanding. The second was Sat Chid Anand. Sat means eternity, Chit means awareness, Anand means blissful. Eternity means we have a longing to live. So that is what we can understand, that okay, soul is also eternal. Awareness, if somebody pinches us, it will pain. So that is awareness. We can understand that from this intuitive understanding. And the third thing is we all want to be happy. So that is also the characteristic of soul described in the scriptures. And based on that, we can have this intuitive understanding that what scriptures are describing us regarding soul, actually we do behave and feel like that. Then there were two scientific understanding. We gave a lot of details from the past life memories, and then also we gave you details about near-death experiences. And we mentioned to you that it's a very it's a branch of knowledge in medicine, specifically psychiatry, where there has been a lot of research, a lot of cases have been there. In fact, there are professional organizations organizing seminars, journals, and so on. Uh, uh, and one such organization was International Association of Near-Death Studies. And we also told you about one famous researcher, Dr. Ian Stevenson. He is not with us on this planet these days, but he has done almost 40 to 50 years of research based on reincarnation using very scrupulous and skeptical scientific means and methods. So this is something which we cannot ignore. It's a very punchy proof which does suggest that consciousness survives death. And then we gave you a little idea of some of these cases, and from past life memories, we told you about that how these people have start recollecting when they are children about their previous life. They recognize their relatives when they go to their previous life places. Their behavior emotionally also, they start behaving, although they are children, but they behave like maybe husbands or fathers and so on. And then birthmark, which was a very strong proof, where a person was got killed by stabbing of knife, and 6 places, all these birthmarks very accurately coincided with the birthmarks that were recorded, or the wounds recorded in the autopsy report. So now we start discussing and take this concept further, where now we have already discussed about karma, karmanyavadikaraste, then the science of soul. So already there is quite some grounding about a lot of concepts, that consciousness survives death and so on. So the concept of karma that we had introduced in our very first class, 2.47 Bhagavad Gita, we will have a little more detailed look on the same concept. And one of the common questions people do ask everywhere, why this world is full of disparities? And then the theme of this class, why bad things happen to good people. So this slide is showing you two pictures. One of the picture on the left hand side, where you see two kids, and these kids seem to be born in a very opulent family, filthy rich. Maybe they are having their own private jet, and moving around the world with their parents happily, and dressed up very nicely. But on the right hand side, you see a family where the lady is with 4 children. Probably she's a widow. She doesn't have even her husband. Maybe her husband either died, passed away, or has abandoned her because of fear of taking responsibility of many children and so on. So we see this kind of disparity in this world is everywhere. We find people who are filthy rich. We find people who are born in astute poverty. So this kind of observation is there everywhere. A child, when he's newly born, actually passes away maybe just 2 hours after he has born or she has born, but another child continues to live for maybe 100 of years. And like that, there are many such disparities we can see all around us. How can we explain such disparities? What is the phenomena, or what is the cause that we can explain these disparities? So as I mentioned in the beginning of our class, and we briefly discussed this, all these things we can explain by understanding the law of karma. And law of karma actually is a law of cause and effect. And as scientific people, as engineers, as students of a prestigious engineering institute, we understand that there is, for every effect, there has to be some cause. So just because that we are not able to explain uh, we are not able to explain or understand the effect, doesn't mean that there is no cause associated with it. So the cause and effect, the cause and effect aspect of disparities of this world can be explained by understanding the law of karma. Let us see how Bhagavad Gita explains this law of karma in detail. So this is Gita chapter 4, verse number 17. Here, Lord Krishna is advising Arjuna. Lord Krishna by now, actually Lord Krishna takes up the role of a teacher of Arjuna. Before that, they were talking like friends. But after chapter 2, their conversation became more like a teacher and a student. So in chapter 4, when he's explaining verse number 17, Lord Krishna is in the role of a teacher. So he says, Karmano hi api bodhavyam cha vikarmanah, akarmanascha bodhavyam, gahana karmano gatihi. Let us see what are the meanings of this verse line by line. So the line fourth, I have given the meaning first of all. Gahana karmano gati. So Lord Krishna is telling to Arjuna that, my dear Arjuna, the intricacies of karma are very hard to understand. Gahana karmano gatihi. Karmano is karma. Gahana means very deep, very intricate, very complicated. The intricacies of karma are very hard to understand. Therefore, know properly what is karma. Karmano hi api bodhavyam. Bodhavyam means knowing. So therefore, know properly what is karma. Karmano hi api bodhavyam. And bodhavyam cha vikarmanah. Also try to know what is vikarma. Akarmanas cha bodhavyam. And what is akarma. So Lord Krishna here in this verse making several meanings of the word karma, or several different ways he's using this word karma. Once he's saying karma, then he's saying vikarma, and then he's saying akarma. And then he says gehana karmano gati. The intricacies of karma are very hard to understand. Now, why Lord Krishna is telling to Arjuna intricacies of karma are very hard to understand? It is mainly because in chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna gives number of reasons for not fighting this battle, one of the reason Arjuna gives to Lord Krishna is that it will be sinful to kill my own relatives. I will get sin. Mujhe paap lagega. Arjuna thinks that fighting will bring sinful reactions to him. Then he is not able to decide whether he should fight, whether he should not fight. Then Lord Krishna is trying to explain to Arjuna that, Arjuna, in this circumstances, actually fighting is the right cause of action, right course of action for you. And I do understand that deciding what is right karma and what is not karma is not so simple. It is not so easy. And that is why he's saying Gahana Karmano Gati. The intricacies of karma are very hard to understand. It's not easy. And then he gives these three terms: karma, vikarma, and akarma. So let us see what does these of three individual terms actually mean. So what is karma? Four meanings of this word karma. We briefly discussed this in 2.47 also in our class 1. But let us see a little more detail about what are the four possible meanings of the word karma. So the first meaning is a very general meaning, which means general actions that we do. Any karma, any activity that we do, simply it is known as karma. Loosely we say that this is my job, this is what I have done. So that is a general, very general meaning, karma, the actions that we do. The second meaning is the reactions we get of what we do. So this is actually the reaction, but the word that we use for it is the same, karma. Like you would see in the language, we have sometimes word which have multiple meanings, and not only multiple meanings, sometimes the words have meanings which are actually opposite to each other. So an example could be like the word discrimination. So discrimination is used sometimes in a negative sense, and sometimes it is also used in a positive sense. For example, discrimination could mean discrimination of gender, discrimination based on caste, creed, nationality, religion, and so on. Here, we generally use this word discrimination in a negative sense, but also the same word discrimination can also be used in a positive connotation. For example, we can say that he's a very discriminating artist. He knows which is a good painting, which is not a good painting, like that. So similarly, the word karma has also multiple meanings. And another meaning of the second meaning of the word karma is reactions. Whatever we do, we get a reaction of that. Like you see the picture here, this guy is pushing these discs, and ultimately these discs, when they when they are fallen everywhere, the final disc is actually going to come back upon him only. So this is action, and when it falls, the last disc, when it falls on this man, that is reaction. Then another meaning of word karma is the system of action and reaction. It's the, when we say law of karma, the system of action and reaction. Sometimes we use the word karma to indicate the system of action and reaction. Like, for example, all of us are under the system of law of karma, under the system of action and reaction. So we are subject, all of us are subject to this system. We cannot escape from this system. And then the fourth meaning actually comes out from the first meaning itself, which is one particular type of action. One particular type of action, generally it is referred to as good action or sukarma, which also could be mean as prescribed duty, or in Hindi or in Sanskrit we call it as kartavya, duty. So like as a father, I have a duty, I have a kartavya. So I have a prescribed duty as a father. You as a student, or you as a teacher, as a friend, also has a prescribed duty. So that is something which is another meaning of the word karma. And from this word karma, sukarma, actually there are various variations. So you could say vikarma. Vikarma means one who doesn't do his duty. So opposite of sukarma. Then there is another word, the third word, which is known as akarma. Akarma is something which you might find something new and interesting. So akarma means reaction-free work. So far we know that whatever we do, we get a reaction, but no, there is a type of karma which when we do actually doesn't get any reaction. So this is called reaction-free work. So in the previous slide that what we just now discussed, Lord Krishna is actually telling to Arjuna, say, my dear sir, karma, the science of karma, or the education of karma is not so simple. It is very difficult and sometimes very hard to understand. So you should try to understand what is karma, what is vikarma, and what is akarma. Because Lord Krishna is trying to alleviate Arjuna's fear about sins. So he's trying to explain to Arjuna the concept of akarma, so that when you fight this war, actually you will not get any sin. So you should understand what is karma, vikarma, and akarma. Like that, he's trying to coach Arjuna. So let us see a little bit more on what is the meaning of word akarma, and let's try to understand with a couple of examples. Sukarma, as I explained, is good karma. So when we do a good karma, we get a good reaction. but for sure we are supposed to get that good reaction. When this good reaction will come, we cannot say that the reaction should not come to us. Rather, we will not say, generally we will say like that when we do a vikarma and when we get a bad reaction. People are always welcoming of good reactions, but they are kind of averse to bad reaction. So vikarma, any bad action we do, it gets a bad reaction. But akarma, which means gets no reaction. Now, what are the what is the difference and what is the key of doing akarma or something converting sukarma into akarma? What is the key? What is the that technology? How can we convert something into akarma so that we don't get any reaction? The key is the intention in which the action is done. We have a mentality when we do action. Sometimes we do an action in a grudging mood. Sometimes we do an action uh, in a very complaining mood. Sometimes we do action in a very enthusiastic mood, and like that. Sometimes we do some action in a very selfish mood. So we have our own uh, our own emotions also working out when we do some actions. So we need to watch out for those emotions, how we do that action. So action done in the mood of a duty actually produces no reaction. When we do some action out of sense of duty, out of sense of kartavya, that kind of an action doesn't bear any reaction. So that is akarma. Actually, akarma goes a little more than that, more deeper than that, and that has a little more spiritual meaning to it. But we will develop those kind of understanding once we are a little more interested in hearing topics like God, spirituality, spiritual world, and so on. But suffice it to say, for this particular class, I would say that action done in the mode of duty produces no reaction. And the example I would give here is a soldier killing an enemy in the battlefield. Now, I am giving this example because Arjuna was in the similar situation and he was saying that he will not fight, citing reasons that how I will kill my own relatives. But if a soldier in an army, he gives this, for example, if there's a war between India and China, and there is a soldier in the Indian army who has maybe a brother-in-law, maybe his wife is Chinese, and his brother-in-law is actually fighting the war from China. Now, this person cannot say in army, he cannot say that he will not fight this war because he may have to kill his brother-in-law. He cannot say. That is something considered a very, very serious offense in army. You cannot run away from army from the call of war like that. So a soldier is duty bound to fight a war. So when the soldier kills an enemy in the battlefield, the government gives a medal to the soldier. But the same soldier, when he goes back to his village or his city and probably engages in a dispute or in a fight with a neighbor, and maybe out of anger he kills that neighbor, the same soldier is actually bound for maybe corporal punishment, like maybe hang till death or maybe life imprisonment and so on. So the same soldier killing actually mean different things in different circumstances. When he kills for an enemy, in the battlefield, he gets medal, but otherwise he's bound by law of the land. Similarly, cashier in the bank, the cashier handles crores and crores of rupees in his job. He counts these rupees, he manages these rupees, and so on. So when the cashier does this out of duty, that this money actually belongs to the bank and ultimately it belongs to the customers of the bank, till that point the cashier is paid well. He actually also gets promoted for doing the job well. But the same cashier, if he tries to steal some money from the same bank, that's the same money that he's counting, he's bound for punishment, he's bound for disciplinary action. So the word akarma, in short, actually means the key, the intention in which the action is done. So the intentions are very important when we are talking about karma and concepts like that. So let us understand a little bit more about karma. Now this slide is telling us that karma is like a seed that we sow. It is something like we sow a seed in the ground. So after some time, the seed grows. There is a little sapling that comes out. The sapling grows, become a little herb or a little small tree. And then the tree grows further and further. And now this bigger tree actually is starting bearing fruit, flowers, and so on. Similarly, the the concept of karma or the science of karma works. Now there is a nice verse that comes in Padma Puran. Hmm? Like you are all students of Sanskrit club at IIT Roorkee, huh? And your objective statement, your mission statement, or your vision statement says to understand the scriptures and to understand the deeper philosophical meaning condensed in these Sanskrit verses and so on. So this is one of the Sanskrit verses in Padma Puran. It is very, very informative about the science of karma. It says, Aprarabdha phalam papam kutam bijam phalonmukham karmaneva kramaneva praliyate Vishnu bhakti ratatmanam. So the translation actually goes like this. For those who are engaged in the devotional service of Lord Vishnu, all sinful reactions, whether fructified in the stalk or in the form of seed, gradually vanish. So we will not talk about the bottom last part, but in order to understand the science of karma, let us focus mainly on the first two lines. Aprarabdha phalam papam putam bijam phalonmukham. Now, these are aprarabdha, aprarabdha phalam, aprarabdha phalam, putam, bijam, and phalonmukham. These are actually four different stages of karma. So aprarabdha karma means what? Aprarabdha karma means that in this lifetime we have done some karma and we have not obtained any reaction of that karma. That is something like stored, stored with the soul. So stored in the subtle body with the mind body and with the mind, intelligence, and false ego. There is a subtle body, so it is stored. That is known as aprarabdha. It has not yet manifested. It has stored and it is supposed to be manifest in the coming lifetime. So this is something, reaction is stored for future birth. That is known as aprarabdha phalam. Then kutam. Kutam means when now uh, after taking the next birth, having karma in the previous birth, we take next birth. So in the next birth, we are born with certain tendencies. We are born with certain proclivities. We have a little bent of mind. We have some inclination towards doing few things. Now here, this particular verse is talking actually about papam. Papam means sinful reaction, but this could equally be applied for punyam also. Punya means good work, good deeds. So kutam means tendencies. So in the context of papam, the tendency could be tendency to cheat, tendency to steal, tendency to speak lie, and so on. So that tendency would be there. So that is something which is known as kutam. Then bijam. Now, after there is a tendency, then there is a next advanced stage, which is bijam. Bijam means now the tendency has grown into desire, ichha. The tendency now has grown into desire to commit a sinful activity or desire to commit a good activity. So this is a prarabdha, reaction stored in the future birth for the future birth. Kutam means in the future birth we have some tendency, some proclivities, and then these tendencies and proclivities are now becoming into desire, and then from these desires, ultimately the jiva or the living entity actually commits an activity. This activity could be a sin, or this activity could be a punya, a papa or punya. So this is actually phalon mukham. Phalon mukham means it has become a fruit now. Now he has to bear that fruit. So the act is now performed, and the reaction has now been received. The phala has been received. After it becomes phalon mukham, the act is performed, and the phal is later at a later stage. The phal is received. So this particular verse actually has been spoken by in the context that when we do devotional service in Bhagavad Gita's terms, it is known as Bhakti Yoga, or there are multiple other yogas. So when we do devotional service to the Supreme Lord, all these sinful reactions or good reactions, aprarabdha, kutam, bijam, phalonmukam, all these are destroyed completely. So we are not talking here mainly about the devotional aspect. We are mainly talking about the karma aspect or the stages of karma. So this is something which is the science of karma, which is the Shastras or the scriptures are telling us about the various stages of karma. Let us advance this concept further. So the karma, when we do, has multiplying effect. It has multiplying effect. Multiplying effect means like we have a snowballing effect. So snowballing effect means once there is a small snowballing, once there is a small particle of snow, when it starts rolling, it starts to gather more and more snow, and later on it starts to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Like that, if the flow of karma, good karma is, or sorry, a bad karma, specifically the sinful karma, is not stopped or is not checked, it can multiply and have a snowballing effect in the future lives. So multiplication effect of karma. So before we understand the multiplying effect, let us understand what are the two outcomes of karma. So two outcome of karma is physical or mental suffering, which is prarabdha. Prarabdha means now the karma has become manifested. After phalonmukham means the activity has been done, and when the karma comes in our life, that is actually when the fruit has been received, that means the suffering has now appeared. And then not only we get a suffering, but also, so suffering is something which is external, we receive outside, but also there is something that happens internal also, which means increased proclivity. So once we start to do something sinful, maybe initially our tendency might be small, but and for that tendency we get a desired bad reaction for that, or something, whatever bad reaction we get. But at the same time, we also get increased proclivity. Increased proclivity means we become more inclined to do the same sinful activity again. Let me explain you with the help of an example. For example, illicit sex. People sometimes engage in unscrupulous sexual activity, like engaging with other people without discriminating, without entering into the institution of marriage, and so on. So when people start to engage in these kind of unscrupulous sexual illicit activities, so externally, the suffering may manifest in the form of sexual disease, for example, AIDS, HIV, and so on. So that is something which the prarabdha or the phala has been received in terms of external suffering. But at the same time, mentally or internally, what happens is they get a strong desire to commit illicit sex again. So that is something which happens from the internal point of view, from the proclivity point of view. So that is something important to understand, that when we start engaging in something which is sinful or which is not so considered as a good karma, we are kind of creating karma. We are trying to create reactions for our future life. And if we don't check these kind of things now, we tend to actually kind of increase the reactions in the future life, and sometimes they increase to such an extent that it becomes difficult to control. Now you can understand that why some people in the society are kind of born with a criminal mindset, and then police and no law or order or whatever disciplinary action can actually check these people, because their karma or their sinful tendencies have grown so much that they're helplessly uh, they're helpless. They cannot actually overcome, because that has gone so much and so much, and so far they are not able to actually check it. They are helplessly engaged in those kind of sinful activities by the nature that they acquire by birth. Okay. Another very nice verse from the scriptures: we cannot say no to the karma phala. It is not something like a order we give in the restaurant that, sir, please bring me so and so food. And later on, after 2 minutes, we change our mind and we say that, oh no, please cancel the juice that I ordered. It is not like that. So the laws of nature work mercilessly on us. Like I said in the beginning of the class, that we all are subject to the system of law of karma. We are all subject to, like when we live in India, we are bound to agree to the law of the land. If we don't follow that, we can't say, sir, we did not know about it. The government will not spare us. Similarly, there is a bigger nature or a bigger governance that works around us, and that governance also work based on certain laws, and law of karma is one of those. So we cannot say no when the karma phala is coming to us. When we are receiving these reactions, we cannot say no to us. And there is one very beautiful verse in the scriptures which explains this point. It says, यथा धेनु सहस्रेषु वत्सो गच्छन्ति मातरम तथा यच्च कृतं कर्म कर्तारम अनुगच्छति. And it is giving an analogy, and a very beautiful analogy. It says, just like a calf can find its mother cow among thousands of cows, similarly, the consequence of an action can search its doer unmistakably. So the karma will find you, like the small calf can find her or his mother among thousands of cows. Similarly, whatever karma we have done in any of our lives ultimately will find us, whenever, maybe in the future life, or maybe future lives, and so on. So we cannot say no to the karma phala. We are bound to accept it. Then karma is also time dependent. Karma takes time to fructify. It is not that every karma will fructify in the same time duration. So we can understand this with the help of an analogy. And this analogy is analogy of maybe a container in which we can store grains only from the top. We can put the grains from the top, but we can take out the grains from the bottom only. So grain storage from top, but withdrawal from bottom. Now, if a farmer has made a produce in the first year, he makes a produce which is of a very third class quality, and he stores these grains in this silo. So the grains will be stored somewhere in the bottom. In the second year, he does once again, he put up the crop and get the harvest. Now the grains are first class, and these grains are actually on the top. But in the third year, when the child of the farmer actually comes and start to take out the grains, third class quality grain comes out. So the child may wonder, my father actually worked very nicely last year and the crop was very good, the grains quality was very good, but I am getting bad quality grains from this silo. What's going on? So the child cannot understand, but the farmer will explain, sir, I put those grains which were third class quality in year one. So first you will get those, and the second time you will get the good quality grains. So what type of grains will come out in year three? Naturally, the third class quality will come out. Similarly, the karma also takes time to fructify. Now, this slide tells us that the time duration of various karmas vary. It is not that each karma will fructify in the same time span. Like, for example, we have instant and delayed karma. Instant karma means if we slap somebody on the road, immediately the person may slap us back. That is instant karma. Like we have instant bank transfer. So instantly you get this karma back. Then there is something which is called a delayed karma. Delayed karma means if a thief steals something, he might get a beating after few hours. He might not get beating instantly. Then another example for delayed karma is if we eat a very heavy dinner in the night, maybe the reactions of that heavy dinner might come maybe the next day or maybe 2 days later, and so on. Then even more delayed karma, for example, there is a murderer who very cleverly designed a murder and committed that sin, committed that offense. So the police might find very difficult, but ultimately when the police finds this murderer, it might still some several years have passed away. So the punishment might come after 10 years, 20 years, or maybe more. He might still escape from the punishment by the police, mind you, but the law of uh, the bigger universal government will still find him. So that is instant and delayed karma. There are a couple of other definitions like sanchit karma. Sanchit karma means it is something like an overall bank account of karmic reactions. Overall, maybe we have lived with so many lifetimes in the past, so karma accumulated of all the lifetimes, that is called sanchit karma. Then we have prarabdha karma. Prarabdha karma means in this particular lifetime, whatever reactions I'm going to face, that is something which is karma falling in the present lifetime. That is known as prarabdha karma. And then different karmic seeds take different time to fructify. Like we have different plants. Papaya grows up in certain duration, mango tree grows up in certain duration. Similarly, each of these karma actually take different time span to fructify. And last is conditions have to be right. Like the tree grows in a good condition or in a right condition, a certain tree grows. Similarly, a karma to fructify has to have the conditions to be right. Now we can explain this with the help of a story. So once there was a hunter who killed 100 child birds uh, while he was in the forest in front of the parents of the birds. So there was a she bird and there was a he bird, and this hunter actually killed 100 of their children in front of their eyes. So what happened was this hunter actually had to face the same karmic reaction. He had to see his 100 sons getting killed in one of his later lifespan, but it did not happen in the very next lifetime. It took some time, because in order to get that son, in order to have become a father of 100 sons, he also had to acquire a lot of punya, lot of good deeds. So he had to actually take birth for 50 more years, 50 more lifespan, in order to acquire those punyas, so that he could become father of 100 sons. So in the 51st birth, when he became father of 100 sons, he actually saw this tragedy when his 100 sons were killed in front of him. And I'm talking about Dhritarashtra. So this Dhritarashtra was the person who was a hunter 51 lifespan back, when he killed these 100 bird children in front of the parents. So the reaction he got after 50 lifetime, like that, the conditions have to be right. So the time duration is there, and the conditions are also there in order to fructify that karma. Now, what should be our vision and our the way we look at this whole thing, this whole science of karma? We might think that if somebody is, for example, having a difficult time, having a difficult condition situation in life, we might become a little indifferent to such people. We might think that, oh, it is mainly because of his karma or her karma, and let them suffer. Let them suffer because they deserve to suffer like that. They might have done something bad, and they now deserve to suffer like that. So that is not something, the attitude we should develop by understanding the science of karma. So there is a karma that we see, and there is a dharma also that we see. So when we see people suffering in this world, our reaction is, we should not focus on the karma of the victim. Rather, we should focus on the karma or the dharma of the relief giver. So whenever we see suffering in this world, our idea or our disposition should be, what can we do to give relief or to support or to help some person like that who is suffering the pangs of karma from their previous life. So the karma concept should be seen uh, uh, for ourselves. Focus on our karma, and when the suffering we see in our life, so we should focus on our karma, and that concept actually make us feel humble, and make us take responsibility of what probably we would have done in our previous life. So when we see suffering, if it the suffering is ours, we should see our karma of the past. That makes us humble, that makes us more responsible. But when we see karma of others, that should make us more feel compassionate, and give help to these people. We should not become hard-hearted in that situation. So that is another aspect of karma and dharma. Then what should be our response to karma? Whenever we see a bad reaction coming in our life, a suffering coming in our life, what should be our response? Now, there could be three possibilities. So there could be a immediate reason for that suffering. There could be a remote reason for that suffering, and there could be a ultimate reason for that suffering. So what is the immediate reason? Immediate reason, for example, we are now in the time span where we are facing, the whole world is facing this problem of coronavirus. The pandemic is all around us. So what is this? That is the immediate suffering. So somebody, if it gets suffering because of coronavirus, then he has to do the necessary mitigation. He has to take a proper treatment, or even before taking the treatment, he should do the necessary thing like wear masks, sanitize their hands, keep proper social distancing, and so on. So that is something for the immediate reason we should mitigate, because that is where what we can do, that is in our control. But sometimes uh, those factors may not be under our control. For example, we are stuck in some situation where the weather has become very bad. There are floods, there probably tsunami, or maybe there is something really bad in terms of our external situation. Now, in some situation like that, where we can't do anything, if it is too cold or too hot outside, we need to tolerate. That is something which is the uh, remote cause. Here we should understand that we can't do anything about it. That is certainly our past karma, which we can't do anything about us, and we simply have to tolerate it. And then the third thing is emigrate. Now this is something which is a spiritual reason. So the uh, whole cause of this karmic reaction that we undergo in our lifetime is mainly the fundamental or the ultimate reason is forgetfulness of the supreme entity, which is God. And in Bhagavad Gita terms, it is Lord Krishna. So ultimately, the reason for our existence in this material world, in the cycle of karma, in the cycle of birth and death, is forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord. So the moment we understand, the moment we realize this particular aspect in our life, then we need to emigrate. Emigrate means we should now start to do something, start to change our mindset from materialistic living to spiritualistic living. We should start connect with the Supreme Lord and do those kind of work which actually will take us away from the cycle of birth and death, cycle of law of karma, and so on. So that the third thing is emigrate, which is the ultimate cause. Ultimate cause is forgetfulness of God. But we are not discussing too much about the spiritual aspect. So I would say not focus on emigrate right now, but at least we should understand how to mitigate the immediate cause and how to tolerate the remote cause, which is based on our past life karma. But more fundamentally, we should see these situation as an opportunity for spiritual growth. So that is something which I have to offer to you as part of this third series today. Why bad things happen to good people? Probably I have not given that answer very directly, why bad things happen to good people, but with these various slides, with understanding the science of karma, it is easy to answer why bad things happen to good people. It is because their karmas of the past are manifesting now, which probably they did not realize they have committed in the previous lives. And that is why we can explain this answer, explain this question, why bad things happen to good people. So with that little humble presentation from my side, uh, thank you very much. I really appreciate for those who have joined us, taken their precious time in this very Sunday morning. And all glories to this very wonderful scripture called Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Uh, Maybe any comments, questions, or any takeaways from the audience? Very much appreciate. Thank you very much. I see one remark on the chat box. It is showing next slide. You can change the presentation mode. Oh, I guess. Oh, was I? Oh, oh, sorry. Maybe technology that was part of my karma this time. So
We saw your entire notes.
okay, no problem. No problem. They were supposed to be delivered to you. So if you saw in the beginning, that is fine. They were for you only. Yeah.
सर मेरा एक प्रश्न है
हाँ बोलिए प्रभु जी.
सर, जैसे कि आपने बताया था कि यदि कोई व्यक्ति किसी मतलब 50 उनको मतलब उनके बच्चों मार दे तो फिर उसको तो फल मिलता है, जैसे धृतराष्ट्र केस में उसके अपने 100 पुत्रों का वध होते हुए उसने सामने देखा था। परंतु सर अगर वही व्यक्ति उसका वो मतलब उसकी ड्यूटी हो तो वो अकर्म में आएगा कि उसके कर्म में आएगा? फिर
उसकी ड्यूटी हो, अच्छा,
जैसे कि
लाइक
कोई
अ
हंटर
हंटर.
है।
ओके ओके.
यस सर।
हाँ तो हंटर, तो मैं आपको वही बता रहा था ना कि हंटर का जो ड्यूटी है, दैट इज नॉट समथिंग which is a prescribed duty in the scriptures. So in the name of duty, we cannot say that if I'm a butcher and I am actually in the business of killing and slaughtering animals, because I am duty bound to do that, then I will not get any karmic reaction. So here you need to understand the bigger picture.
The
So
spiritual side.
The spiritual side, yes. So if we only look at maybe from this worldly perspective, we may not be able to answer that question. So the spiritual side, or when you see this in the bigger picture, what we explain is that all the living entities are actually part and parcel of God. It is not only human beings who are children of God. There are other living entities, for example, plants, trees, animals. They also have soul. So soul is not only simply related to human beings. It is also related to plants, animals, trees, and so on. Now, if a person who is more willing and who is more eager to advance from the spiritual perspective, so what he has to do, he has to see all the living entities around him or her in connection with the Supreme Lord. We cannot say that I love my father, but I hate my brother, or I will kill my brother, but I still love my father. We cannot say like that. So similarly, when people like these people like hunters or butchers and so on, when they say, or when they are in this business or in this profession of killing, they generally do it out of ignorance, because they don't understand the law of karma or the science of karma, and that is why they engage in these kind of activities. But once they, or people who understand, like I said, emigrate. Once people start to understand the spiritual aspect and all these things, they stop engaging in these activities and start to come out from these activities. So a hunter cannot say that I am killing these birds and I can still be God conscious. No, he cannot say like that. So in order to be God conscious, he has to respect life everywhere, not only the human beings, but also other living entities also. So that is the broader answer to that question.
धन्यवाद महोदय।
Dhanyawad. Nice question. That is also very commonly asked. Yeah. So any other question? Any other doubts? Okay. In that case, maybe I will. Put this. Yeah.
Can we have 2-minute discussion on what are the topics of interest for the next class, the next fortnightly class? From the students, if any volunteers can share their inquisitiveness on what they want to hear more in the subsequent class, which will be the final class for this lecture series, the fourth class. Anyone? I would request Professor Anil Gauri Shetty also to comment on this so that we get sufficient time to prepare as well as sufficient time to announce and send the flyer.
No, it is the students who have to decide because the event is mainly for the students, especially,
Yes.
and the participation is also mainly from the students. So,
Correct.
Yeah, I think they should come forward.
सर एक भागवत गीता में एक अध्याय में सात्विक, तामसिक और राजसिक प्रवृत्ति के व्यक्तियों की बारे में उल्लेख किया गया है, तो मैं उनके बारे में कुछ जानना चाहूँगा।
फिर से बताइए, फिर से बताइए।
No, so Anurag, what he is saying that perhaps in the next class, you can dwell upon more on this. It's a subject in itself.
Goodness, passion, ignorance, sattva,
Yeah,
rajas,
yeah.
and tamas.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, no problem. We'll develop on that. Or yeah, that's fine. Okay, so should we conclude, sir?
Yes, please.
Okay, so once again, thank you everyone, and we'll share with you the slides and the recording soon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Punarmilamaha.
Punarmila.
Punarmilamaha.
Punarmilamaha.
धन्यवाद।